Excellent question. The question is friction-wise, what's the best? And that is one thing that really needs to be noted. Steel, depending on what it has as far as a coating, is going to be the worst. So this guy's going to have poor friction characteristics.
But if you add the mortar coating.
The mortar coating makes it a lot better, brings it up to about aluminum or maybe a little better than aluminum. The epoxy will bring it clear up to the effect of PVC. This is the exception. Epoxy has excellent friction characteristic. The epoxy has excellent characteristics. Aluminum's medium friction. PVC is minimum friction. Doesn't mean it doesn't have any, but it has the least of all the pipe. They rate these in a C factor, a coefficient of friction resistance, and the higher the number the better. PVC is rated at a 150. Bare steel new is rated at about 120. As it gets used, it'll drop to, like 10-year-old steel drops to about a 100. Aluminum's rated about 120. Another thing we can do with steel, if we're using it above ground with center pivots and with riser stock, we can galvanize it. Another coating that I missed here, should talk about that. Galvanized. You can also paint it, but painting's kind of like window dressing. It doesn't last very long. But galvanizing is a process that gives you a layer of effective zinc coating on the pipe that is a corrosion barrier, which really improves the life of the pipe, also improves its friction characteristic. It'll bring it up to 130, maybe 140, depending on how good a job the galvanizing process was. And there is there's some other types of steel out there. There's a Core 10. It's an alloy, a steel with an alloy built in that resists corrosion through the whole thickness of the pipe. One of the pivot manufacturers uses that as their standard pipe. They don't put any coating on it at all. It's just a special alloy of steel that has some built-in rust inhibitors in it. It's called Core 10 steel. And I think it's spelled C-O-R-T-T-E-N. Yes.
On this mortar, is it very similar to what you would use in bricks and stuff?
Absolutely. It's exactly the same material that we got right here.
Gosh, it seems like that would be so friction. It seems like it would add to friction.
But you can make it just smooth as silk with the troweling process, and then the minute you start getting just a little bit of flow on it, it'll fill in the gaps. There's going to be some particulate come down the pipe, and they will fill in all the little tiny crevices, and it'll just get really, really slick and smooth. It really has very good characteristics. Way better than bare steel. Way, way better. Because bare steel, as it corrodes, it starts to fleck off, and you start getting rough surface. The surface gets rougher and rougher inside. The more roughness, the more turbulence. As the water runs along the side, it's bouncing off of those rough spots. And that's why you want to keep the sides smooth, so the water on the edges just keeps sliding straight without having to indent and tip into those crevices. And when it does, it hits a crevice, it knocks it toward the middle of the pipe, which creates turbulence, and the water starts tumbling down the pipe. Yes, Jason.
What about the advantages and disadvantages of welding the pipe together or clamping it back?
Question was welding and clamping it together, which is better. A smooth weld is definitely going to be the most efficient process in a steel pipe, because you're trying to make one continuous smooth tube. If you have couplers between each joint of pipe, you're going to have an area where you have an indentation or out dent, and it's an area where there's going to be a little bit of flow disturbance. So it adds slightly to the friction loss. It's also more expensive, so you could use steel with couplers, or you can weld it together. It becomes non-portable the minute you weld it together, whereas it could be used and moved if you use couplers.
On the larger steel pipes, like the 6-foot that you're talking about, these or you probably river that sort of thing, do you use like bell-end type pipes and then weld on grooves on the inside, or just two flush ends and weld